Today we're talking about trust. Do you trust the people that you're talking to online? Do you trust the people that respond to incidents for your company? But most importantly, do you trust the people that set your admin passwords? All that and more on today's episode.
This is episode 26 of the DTF Cyber Podcast. I'm Damian.
This is Troy.
And it's your boy, Fern. Let's go. Today's first article. It's about Microsoft Teams. And the simple fact that there were some vulnerabilities with Microsoft Teams. Specifically, what people were able to do is spoof a trusted person. And so here's the craziest part. They don't even have to be within your organization to do this. So, according to the article, what people were able to do back in 2024, in March, was they could send a message from a third party to a trusted person internal to an organization. And then they could edit who that person was and the context of the message. So that way it appeared as though it came from a trusted source. So imagine this. Or actually, hang on, it's better. It's better than that. Not imagine this. You know how people always get that text that says, "Hey, do you have 5 minutes to go get me some gift cards?" Like, that's old school hack, right? New school is they send it directly in Teams. So you open your phone, you go into your Teams app, Microsoft Teams app, and you get a message from the CEO in Teams. It's not a text message where everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's fake." It's not a text from your CEO from a 64 dash number in the Philippines, right? That's not the case anymore. This is directly on your phone in Microsoft, listed as your company CEO saying, "Hey, we need gift cards."
I think everybody knows by now. Hopefully they do know.
Cards.
Yeah, if gift cards are out of the question. No CEO is going to go ask a random employee to go get them gift cards. It doesn't matter if it's over a trusted messaging system. Could be Teams, could be Slack. You know,
Could be SMS, yeah.
okay, yeah.
Text message from your boss.
Okay, so that's true. Well, for people in security, I think people in security know that. But would you say, I think of a name, Tammy in HR knows this?
Yeah, they should, because every organization should probably do security awareness training from day one.
Mm-hmm.
As of last month, in October, security awareness training.
That's right. October is annual security awareness training month.
And if a company is staying compliant with their, is it SOC 2? No, type SOC. Which one is it where they require that you have to have compliance training internal to your organization for your people?
Well, there's a lot of those. I think you're thinking of SOC 2, Type 2, but there's tons of regulations that require internal, employee awareness training. I have to do this with my mom, believe it or not. It's not just people who you work for. It's like scams are happening to people across all walks of life. So if you don't know that gift cards are out of the question, you really should watch some online safety videos or something, because hackers are definitely taking advantage of those who have the least capabilities of seeing those. But you're right, Damian.
Yeah, so let's get this clear, Fern. If you get a text message from Troy asking you to buy a bunch of gift cards, it's probably not Troy.
But I think this exact article shows you it's a little bit more serious than we thought, Damian. It's like, how do you prepare your staff for the fact that your internal software, whether it's, the collaboration suite, video, even with deepfakes and such like that, we really have to train process. This is not a technology problem. This is a people education issue that we have to address. We have to train people in a process that matters. Wire fraud has been big for years, and I'm talking about millions of dollars in loss. So you have to have a process that says, if you get a request for something that's over a certain dollar amount or a certain process, you have to verify it a certain way. Maybe it's a word of the day. Maybe it's some type of a numeric code that you get it off a different way. But you got to be creative here, because threat actors are using AI to get around defenses, and they're defeating even voice, even video spoofing of CEOs and people in charge, especially CFOs, et cetera. You might think that would never happen at my company, but I've seen nonprofits, I've seen churches, I have seen all types and walks of businesses get taken advantage of for this exact scam.
But it's not always asking for them to buy gift cards or for money. It could be proprietary information, right? So what if you get a message from, an executive saying, send me the roadmap for this product that we're building, and that's all top secret.
Or, this has come up a few times that I've heard of, where with Copilot implement it, there are sometimes misconfigurations, right? And those misconfigurations open up certain buckets of information to everyone as long as they ask for it, right? So there are cases where a CEO's driver's license is in a SharePoint file somewhere, right? That was set incorrectly. And I even heard a story recently because of open enrollment where people have to apply for benefits, right? And when they apply for benefits, if they have kids, birth certificates or copies are required. And when those get submitted, if the file was misconfigured or the folder, now those are available.
Yeah, it's a completely different problem.
Oh, okay.
We can go into a whole episode on that part of it. But this is just like straight up messaging from a system that you trust. I think in this case, right, obviously a company like Microsoft's going to respond pretty quick and make sure the vulnerabilities are known and make sure that, they patch it if it's on their side, and the instructions for you to patch it as a customer is done on your side.
Yeah. I think where I was thinking was if I don't know, it's a separate problem, but if that problem exists and there's a third party that can spoof a person within the organization, they say, hey, can you give me this file when you have a second? And then if the whole situation that I described.
Yeah, but I don't know if that necessarily plays true, because if I were to share it, let's say CEO says, hey, can you get me that file? I'm going to share it directly to them, to their email address. It doesn't go to the attacker. So I would have to download it and then send it to that person externally.
So maybe files.
Yeah, data security is a big discussion.
Yeah.
It's my biggest fear, right? I'm working on some pretty high level, security documents, and I'm saving them, and all of a sudden they're visible to the entire company. That would be tragic, right? So data hygiene and data security are definitely top of mind. When I talk to CISOs about their biggest problems, the two number one things that come up besides AI, which is in every conversation, is data and identity. How do we secure our identities and how do we protect our data? Probably are top of mind for every CISO out there.
Yeah, I would say, so here's one of the protections that I would recommend, right? And I don't know the Microsoft Teams settings, but I can tell you within Slack, for example, inside of a corporate Slack, you could limit what external connections are made to external parties. And so most organizations would have a policy that says you can only connect to trusted enterprises. And so, for example, if my organization is doing business with yours, we can set it up so that there is communication that happens across our Slack platforms. But somebody who, let's say Troy, I don't know Troy, he won't be able to message me through my corporate Slack because it's not integrated.
Yeah, but so what in Microsoft? I mean, I know you said for Slack it's different, but I think they call that federated in Microsoft, right?
It's a federated connection. So in order for this type of attack to happen anyways, you would have to have that permission. Access, the permission for this person to send you in the first place a message to your corporate teams.
So what you're saying is if the company doesn't have that setup, that policy set up where federation is required, that's where if
it's open, right? Yeah. So there's some downsides. We always talk about this in this podcast. Sometimes you have conveniences, right? And sometimes the conveniences lead to
allow all.
Yeah. Too much access.
Yeah. Okay. So there are two situations here. One where security team says allow everything, and then that's where a potential spoof could come in. Or the one where they say only federated organizations, at which point all the salespeople that want to send you a Slack message can't because they're getting blocked, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's not even the security team that sets that permission. It could be the IT team because they own that Microsoft relationship.
Interesting. But if they're not working with security or security is not in those conversations, that becomes a problem.
Would you like to say, Troy? Security is a team sport? Perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. Security is a people sport, right? You got to support your people. You got to support the team 100%.
Yeah. Perfect example where security and IT need to be talking.
But really something like that for any company that has any sort of, not UX, any sort of collaboration tool, right? CX, I think is what they call it, like customer experience. No, that so many acronyms, it's hard to keep them all together. Basically, if anyone has any sort of collaboration tool, I think this would have hit security's radar at any point, right?
Well, you'd hope, right? There's a lot of shadow IT.
Yeah.
So people are going to go and spin up their own SaaS collaboration tools.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that? Can you control that? I mean, there's ways to do it. We won't get into it in this episode, but just things to think about.
Yeah. Well, so I guess my side is, so I was at a local event recently where there were some people presenting. It was the CSA event, right? So Cloud Security Alliance, and they had a vendor go up and show their tool like a quick 5-10 minute demo with a room full of people. And I'm looking at the screen, and off to the far right was a little Z, and that's for Zoom info, right? So this company pays for Zoom info, and I know because I might have Zoom info. I have this little built-in, right? So I can see, I click on that and I can go and you could see, and within Zoom info, what they allow you to see is different tools that companies use because it gives you competitive information. Like, oh, they use this, and this, right? And if you go in there, it tells you like Teams, Zoom, Slack, like these are all part of that whole thing. And so what I was thinking is, as we're talking about this, is if someone had that information, they could easily try and just hit every single bucket of collaboration tool that an organization has, right? So this tool basically knows, essentially, potentially, where the shadow IT exists, because it gives you just a list of 5 or 6 items that someone's using within an organization for collaboration, and all you have to do is just know what they're using. And if you know that from a trusted source that they're using this, right, then you could target
the downsides of using your company name. So, for example, I don't know what's the format for just Zoom. Let's say Zoom, for example, company.zoom.us. So you just go to company.zoom.us. You're going to their company Zoom. Probably the same thing for Microsoft, Google. I don't know, Workday, Salesforce, company.workday.com.
Like on the header of the domain. Is that what they call that?
The subdomain.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that where you log into like a Zoom and it says the company name at the very top.
No, the first, just put it before the domain. Just put a subdomain. Get to it.
Okay. Oh, okay. So maybe that's an easier way than paying for the Zoom license, right? So.
No, that's the default way. So if we had one for DTF, it would just be dtf.zoom.us.
And then
if we're paying each other and we're using Workday, most likely it'd be like dtf.workday.com.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is
it's easy to find out.
That's typically, recommendation is security by
obscurity.
Yes. So don't use your company name as the default domain for a lot of these services. People will find them.
Okay. That's a nugget for sure. But I maybe for me that's a nugget, right? But I think a lot of people in security know this already, right? So people that aren't in security that might be listening, we appreciate you. But
well, there's other ways. You can, DNS is open, so you can just scan the DNS and see what subdomains exist.
Yeah. So there's a plethora of ways to get in. So what are you supposed to do? Like, for example, Troy, you're using Microsoft Teams, and you know that the spoofing is possible, and you set it where only federated companies can use or can message you. Are you confident that you're 100% safe?
Yeah, so there's two sides of this coin. I think for security leaders, you have to have a good inventory of your applications and stay on top of the versions and the updates and security. It's not just Microsoft. That this could happen to any of the unified communications providers out there. Microsoft was quick to patch this security issue. But my point is that as a security leader, you should be aware of what's in use in your environment using some tool to discover and catalog shadow SaaS or whatever it is. That's number one. Number two is if you're a user, just like we said at the beginning on the user education and awareness, you should be aware that the person you're talking to may not be who you think they are. So just be ready to question. Maybe some red flags pop up, like you normally speak with this tone to that person. You can tell it's not them. If it's your best work friend, all of a sudden they start speaking very robotically and about work. You can understand there's a difference there. So just be aware that things are possible. It's not happening every single day and gets patched pretty quickly. But if you see those red flags, notify your security department for a second look just to be safe.
Yeah, I think the first line of defense is always the user. That's why they should be trained and just understand that these things are possible, right? You want to make sure, like, just because it looks like it came from the CEO doesn't necessarily mean it came from the CEO. So just, don't trust in that communication, first of all. Second, what's the ask? Because if it's proprietary information, financial information, sensitive data that you think could be kind of scary to be floating out there in the public, then maybe ask someone to check it or validate with the CEO or whoever's asking you through a second, like a phone call or email, a different way, right?
Okay. So essentially with your own trusted source.
And then third, I would say if you have visibility of data movement, then even if the first two of those layers fail, the third one would be, okay, if I see, let's say I'm the security department, now I see this user sending sensitive data somewhere where it shouldn't go, then I would have guardrails in place to stop that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And second, one other thing there is if you normally don't speak to your CEO, like most large companies, the CEO has a very small circle of people that he works with, like the CFO, the general counsel, and others. And most of us are not in that circle. So if he reaches out one day for some information, that should be a red flag in itself. If the CEO doesn't normally talk to you, or the CFO never reaches out for something, and all of a sudden you're getting questioned by somebody you don't normally work with, think of it, double check the source, question it, because that could be fraud.
Yeah. Okay. But again, that's just back to the user. Like that's more, but it's more so the training, right? But there's another problem with training is do people actually do it? Because
that's a big challenge, actually. Sorry to cut you off there, Fern, but I was going to say, does anybody here know of a training that you really like? So I think that's a challenge, right? Getting people to take the training, number one, is a challenge. Getting them to like it and actually absorb the content is second. I think we should really have some interactive training, maybe gamified somehow, or something that's interesting that people want to do and that's interesting to them. And I'm not trying to call out of any vendor here. I'm just saying, as a practitioner, I know users are very reluctant to do annual security training. It's very boring and dry, and they don't remember any of it 5 minutes later. So how do we turn that into like a gamification, something where they, feel rewarded and they're actually interested in seeing it? I don't know the answer to that, but I think this is where we should be going.
What if there was a mentalist that did shows and that could show up to an organization and do training, security training around a whole 1 hour or 2 hour performance?
Yeah, pretty engaging. Gary is pretty engaging.
There are people out there, and if you're looking for that person's name, Gary Chan, CHAN.
Oh, now you had to be going somewhere with that. I was like, that was weird.
Yeah, I knew.
There we go.
Yeah,
but if you Google it, he's the only one that does it. So
security mentalism. I think he created his own category.
He's a category of one. So I know it's kind of a random thing, but he was on the show probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, and that's what he does. Not primary. He's a CISO, so he understands security. He understands how to help, and he's not just a random person doing mentalism. He's actually, his whole act is focused around security, but making it engaging.
Yeah, trying to keep people engaged through awareness training is tough. So that's one way, but obviously Gary doesn't scale because it's only one person, and everyone probably tries to book him in October.
Probably.
Hey, I have a challenge then for our listeners. If you know of a good solution, put it down in the chat, in the comments. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Love to hear what you're doing for security awareness training that's working.
We do games. We'll do Jeopardy games or Wordle games.
That's fun.
Hub prizes and stuff. But I think what has to happen is we got to move away from awareness training in 1 month, right? Or just once a year. You got to move it into a regular occurrence and break it down into smaller sizes. People remember it more.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you have kids that are learning fractions or division, right? They do it at the tail end of the school year, and then they go back to school in the fall, and it's like they forget everything over the summertime, right? So, people obviously, and then by practice and repeating it, they learn it eventually. But a lot of times, like even with my kids, we'll do one thing, and then 3 months later, you kind of go back into that, and then it's like, oh, I don't remember how to do this. And so, what do you mean we just covered this? But I'm a math pro, so obviously it makes it. I know how to do it, but I think a lot of people that aren't security pros can't necessarily, or don't always necessarily remember, 3 months down the line. So if they're doing it once a year, once every 12 months, I agree.
Well, people, it's so long, right? So let's say you're sitting there through a 1 hour session trying to learn it with some quizzes at the end. Nobody pays attention.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not paying attention, isn't like their retention rate for anything like below 20% anyways? Yep. So, and here's the crazy. What's that, Troy?
Oh, so here's the thing too, is like, we assume because we work in security that this is awesome. This is, why wouldn't people remember this stuff? But, we're talking about the people who are actually making the business thrive. They work in different divisions, different departments, business units, that they only think about security when they have to go through the annual training, along with other HR trainings and other sexual harassment training and other, policy trainings and so on. So, cybersecurity training just gets lumped in to that big policy set, and then it just loses its luster. I think we should be pulling that out, doing it at a different time from that annual training, and making it sticky. And when I say sticky, I mean rememberable, something that they're going to enjoy going through originally, and maybe even given some rewards for those who score the highest. I don't know. Find a way to make people engaged in that training so that it does stick, because it's so important to the success of our security program, because the people at the keyboard doing the business for the business are the ones who are really going to be able to show us where the red flags are when they happen.
Yeah. Or if they're doing, here's another reason to not do it all at once, because how often is something in October true the following August, right? With security, with everything moving so fast, right? Everyone always says, oh, like, with AI, everything's moving so fast, right? So if that's the case, do you realistically, and this is for either of you, do either of you realistically expect something that someone learns in October of this year to be current in October of next year, based on the way things are going and the way that we'll say things are changing? Or would it be better to do something maybe quarterly or even monthly that kind of stays up to date with the current?
Well, if
things?
something new happens, yeah, you can do a special one, right? So if there's a special type of attack that's going to happen, a new attack vector, you can push that out to your employees. You don't have to wait. I don't think you should wait till October. So if it happens in March, then yeah, put out a short training to say, just so you're aware, this is the current attacks that are happening, and we want you to be just looking out for them.
Yeah. Well, even like an email. Well, maybe less an email.
Yeah, just an email.
Do people actually read that?
We also bundle up training with our phish testing. So we do quarterly phish testing, or I'd have it in my previous roles. And so when they fail phishing, they actually get prompted with some training that shows them why they failed, what they missed, and what they could do better. And so I think that's also a little bit helpful to do quarterly. But you have to realize that when people are forced to take training, they don't want to take the training, no matter how good it is. So, moving from annual as part of your, October Awareness Month to quarterly might be a bit much for some employees who would be resistant to it at that point.
If it's shorter, I think they would prefer to do shorter ones versus a full one every year.
A full hour for full 2 hours, whatever it is. Yeah, that's the worst. You sit there for 2 hours just letting it play in the background. I don't know if that's actually true.
That's a good point, Fern. I'm sure that people do that. So here we are talking about efficacy, and you got people who are just clicking through and letting it play in the background or on another screen while they do other work. That's not getting our message across. It's not stopping threats. That's not learning about the things we're trying to teach them. So we got to be better about how we train people and engage with them.
Yeah, because the problem with those is that they let you play them, because some of them have it where depending on your screen time, right? How much time you're like within a module, it understands your, we'll say screen time, your listen time, right? But then you can take the test. And then when you take the test, if you fail, you can redo it, right? So what happens, and I don't know if anyone's doing this, I'm just going to say, hypothetically speaking, people could just let it play in the background, volume down, so it's running, but it's keeping track of the volume and how you're listening to it. It just knows that it's playing. Then you go take the test, bomb the test. But when you bomb the test, it tells you the right answer. Take a few screenshots, boom, put that in a file, go back, play it, retake it, 100%. Boom.
Seems like a lot of energy not just to listen. Take the test yourself.
I think a lot of the questions are common sense. So if you got them wrong, yeah.
Well, I don't know. This is what I said, hypothetically speaking. This is the case. It could happen. That's what I imagine happening in some instances. I don't know. So there's trainings out there, right? But like you guys said, maybe an email or some other situations where people hear about the new things consistently would just kind of help reinforce it. That was kind of a random rabbit hole, right? We were talking about Microsoft Teams and people being spoofed, right? Blocking that. Then have that turn into training.
Yeah, I know, but it's just, I think the point is you can't always 100% trust where that message is coming from. Because this is coming from external, but they're spoofing it to make it look like it's coming from internal. So obviously it's an external threat actor.
Yeah.
But there may be cases where that threat actor has made it inside of your system.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always really just awareness of, hey, do I really trust that this message is coming from that person? Maybe so, if it's a normal conversation or I'm asking questions about something mundane. But as soon as it gets to something out of the ordinary, that becomes suspicious, right? You should really question it.
Yeah. I think it just goes back to just instinct. Like if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not, right? So if something gives you the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, so trust it until you are given reason not to trust it.
Yeah.
But just be aware that these things happen.
Or as they say, trust but verify.
Yeah.
Right. See, there's a lot of things that, buzzwords that people hear, and this is how you apply them, people. That's how you apply them. But what you did say was external, right? These people are external. And then you did say if they're, I forget the exact word, but you said if they're within the organization, right? So this whole situation, spoofing. Next story, incident response. There is a company out there. Do we name the company or do we not?
Oh, it's in the article.
Okay. We're just going to say there's a company out there that the way that they make their money is through incident response and brokering secure transactions via crypto to pay threat actors for, in a lot of cases, I think some of their primary use, I don't think they set out the business to be a, hey, pay us and, we'll get the money off as a, what do they, when you buy a house, what do they call that? Like an escrow type of account?
Yeah, escrow.
So essentially that's what it sounds like, a broker or an escrow account. And whether they started in this way or didn't, what they were doing was a lot of transactions for organizations that were paying threat actors for ransom money. And what ended up happening was they approached one of the groups called Black Cat, not Black Hat, Black Cat, and essentially set up an agreement where they were double-sided agents. So the people that buy and sell a home, there's usually two real estate agents. Sometimes if the seller happens to have an agent that knows the buyer, that person they double dip, right? Same situation. But now this incident response or trusted financial transaction company is acting for a customer, and they just happen to find a buyer that is the affiliate with the Black Cat, right? So, but people obviously wouldn't know that, or they should.
Let's back up a little bit here. A lot of larger organizations will have their own incident response teams, but even if they do, they'll contract with third parties to help them through a potential incident. And so there's probably a retainer that's issued, and then if you get hit with something like ransomware, you reach out to this third party that you have a contract with, and they help you through that incident, whether it's researching the origins or trying to make sure that the actual threat is neutralized and contained. There's a whole bunch of services that they can provide. In this case, I think one of the services is negotiating to pay the ransom, right? We've always said
don't pay the ransom.
Don't pay the ransom.
Mhm.
Actually, in some countries, in some places, it's illegal to pay the ransom. Right. So let's start there. Right. So I think in this case, they may have been doing other IR type tasks, but in this case, they were going to negotiate the ransom, and they happen to be representing the people collecting the ransom as well. So kind of shady.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things about this article that was interesting is that these intermediaries, these incident responders would know how much the company was willing to pay because they're in those confidential discussions with decision makers. How much can we pay? How much should we pay? How much will we pay for this information that was taken or stolen or locked up? And that information, going back to the threat actors, coming in just a little bit more than that number would help the threat actors get paid more consistently, and would, force victims to pay more often. It's just it's a terrible storm. And honestly, as a former police officer myself, you always look at the stories of bad cops as an example where, one bad apple spoils the entire bunch. So every cybersecurity professional out there should be angry with anybody who would side or take advantage of people in this industry. We do this as a mission. It's not just a job, it's a mission for sure to protect people, companies, data. And when we hear about some people that are there supposedly to help, but are actually harming the victim, it's infuriating.
Yeah, what I was thinking about when you described that was if they have that information on we'll say, not necessarily budget, but like the first thing I think of is budget. So I know Damian said he was doing some work in his backyard over the weekend. And my first thought was, I've had stuff to do in the backyard because a lot of times, like we have palm trees. We have like 4 big palm trees, 3 in our back, and then 1 on the side of the house on the front. And you call these companies and you say, hey, I have 4 palm trees. All right, how tall are they? I don't know, 20 feet, right? Okay, can you send us a picture? We can get an idea what it looks like. Okay, boom, so they can see. Do you have a budget? What's your budget for this? I don't know. It's like, we'll just say, I'm going to say 1,000. I know that's ridiculous, but we're going to say 1,000. Oh, I think we can get this done for $950. Like, wait a second.
Yeah,
exactly.
And you could have paid 5.
Yeah. It's like, wait a second. So you're telling me that if it's so
that drives me crazy too. Like when we have these conversations with vendors, and I know you talked to Gene Shapiro about this a couple episodes ago. It's the same thing. It's like when you get on a call with the vendor and they always say, so how much money do you have budgeted for this? Like
0.
Most times there is no money budgeted for it.
Yeah.
It's reactionary because unless we're planning, and if I'm planning, I really don't know because you haven't told me how much it costs. I don't know how much to put in my budget. Yeah. So that's really dumb question. Don't ask that question.
Just give them the price. Yeah. And you either get like you get that sideways like, oh really, like that much, or you'll get that's pretty cheap. But either way, it doesn't matter because if it's cheap and they're happy with the price, they're going to buy it, which means you're going to get the sale. Like that, isn't that what you wanted to begin with? If you knew that you could have charged them double the price.
But that'd be the equivalent of somebody on the customer side who knows the budget
and telling the vendor, hey,
and getting a cut or a commission from the vendor side. So this is exactly what's happening, right? So let's say I know my budget,
$1 million.
Yeah, let's say it's $1 million, and I know this vendor, and I want their product. I know I have $1 million. I know the product only costs $500,000, but I can say, hey, you know what? I can like
double.
I can
double the price.
I can try. Give me an invoice for $950, and then give me half the difference.
That's crazy.
I wonder how many times that happens. I think that probably does, and people don't realize it, that there's like leaders taking a kickback that way.
I've heard of stories where people, and this is that they got caught, but they got caught because the procurement team asked for vendor pricing from the manufacturer, and what they found was the vendor price, the reseller price, was double MSRP. So they were charging the customer double of the list price, right? And then when the procurement got involved, because typically I guess they don't, but I don't want to say too much. But here's the reality is this team doesn't get involved for purchases under a certain amount. So a lot of organizations say, well, if it's 50, if it's 100, if it's 200, if it's a million, there's these different like requirements for signature, right? So a lot of times if someone has a procurement budget, it doesn't have to go through procurement. It will go to procurement, but it will not be reviewed by procurement. So that's the difference, right? And if it's under a certain dollar amount, as long as it's under that dollar amount, it just goes through and they send the PO, but they don't actually get involved until it gets over, say, like $1 million, right? And when it's over $1 million, these teams jump in. But what happened was this company, procurement team looked into one, maybe like a spot check. What they found out was that the price that they were being sold was double MSRP. That's the story.
Yeah.
So, yes, the answer is yes, it does happen. How often? I don't know, but it's possible. But same situation as what happened here is this person knew, this broker, right, facilitator of a transaction knew what people were able to spend. So when, the actual number came in to say, hey, this is what you owe us to decrypt, right? Or to get everything back online, it became, well, that's kind of what we were hoping for, right? We were looking for, I think some of the things that they said were like 250 and above. So they weren't charging tens of millions, but they were getting away with 300,000, $500,000 here, 230,000 here, I think was the exact number, but definitely insider information. And that's exactly what these people had.
Yeah. So I think here's the thing, right? It's, you got to trust who you're working with, and that's always a hard thing to do if you don't know them. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they have a reputation, like how long have they been doing this? How many other customers have they had? Or did they just get started? So I don't know the whole history here. But I would, there's a lot in that saying, work with the people that you trust and the people that you know. Obviously, if I know somebody on the vendor side for the past 10 years and, have done business with them and they've never done anything shady, even if I go and hire, a leader within my team, hopefully I know them and I trust them to manage part of the budget, because sometimes our security budgets are large, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not that we have unlimited funds. They all have to go back to map to addressing a vulnerability or a weakness. Mm-hmm. It's hard to, I would, if you ask me if that were to happen to my team, I'd be devastated, right? Because you trust all the people you work with. Now, being an external vendor, it's the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times you would have to work with a vendor like this, because not many organizations have to use an external IR service.
No, mm-hmm. I don't. Well, yeah, I think.
But then if you do, most likely you go to a big name, because you really need to make sure everything's covered.
Yeah, or you ask a friend that's in the community that and say, hey, like, who do you use for? Like you say, for pen testing, right? A lot of people say, hey, like, who do you guys use for pen testing? Because, like, every year we want to use a different company. We've used two, well, now we're looking for a third, and then we'll go back to the original one next year, right? I imagine the same question gets asked. Hey, who do you use for incident response?
Yeah, but retainers are different, though, because there's not a lot of times they get called up for incidents.
Yeah, one of the things I love about IR retainers is that if you don't use them by the end of the year, you can usually get some services out of them, like a pen test or a report of vulnerabilities or something like that. So they're not completely wasted on the retainers. But I would say that, this is a human problem. These are people who were indicted, so they're going to be criminals, hopefully with a criminal history. And what I mean is that no big business is immune from hiring people that are going to make bad decisions. You can do the very best you can with a background check and things like that. But when people are tempted with large sums of money, sometimes they make bad decisions. And so I don't know that a bigger firm is going to necessarily firewall you from people that would make those bad decisions, but definitely you got to keep an eye out on these things. One of the things Fern mentioned, which I love, is like the rack rates or the MSRP. If we could do a better job having like a diverse set of value-added resellers or where we purchase our software from, also would help us, understand exactly what we're paying as opposed to what's the rack rate, so to speak.
Yeah, but I think in the example that I gave of the story, the limiting factor there was the authority of the person and the dollar amount of the transaction. If and so that's risk there is like, not that anyone wants to think that that's possible, right? But the same reason, like most people don't like to think about term coverage, right? Or like what's the one, I forget the exact name, but for kids, right? Like death insurance, like for family, like it's just such a weird thing to sign up for, but like it could happen. You just don't like to think that it could happen. Same thing here is like essentially an insider threat that can turn into some sort of payout, right? But this person that had the information of the organization, how they process their procurement or how they procure, essentially game the system until they were caught, right?
Well, in this case, right, so their names are public, and hopefully they don't get another position of trust like this again. But just in case, anyone who's coming in as a third party, you should be able to do your own research on the people doing the work for you.
Yeah, and the title of the article, it says how to trade your $214,000 cybersecurity job for a jail cell. So these people are making really good money, right? That's what, like $100 an hour. So you sit at a desk for 8 hours, you're making $800 a day. Essentially, is what this job was paying, more or less at an hourly rate. Yeah, $100 an hour, just poof, gone. Like you're never gonna find a job in security ever again. But apparently, 200 is not enough. I don't know. I mean, I think Troy's got more experience with seeing people that make really good money that do some of these crimes, right? Is there, like, just out of curiosity, is there like a tipping point where you see more people do it one way or the other, Troy, or is it just kind of just across scattered?
Even as an investigator, I used to investigate white collar crime, and it was funny that it would be something in their personal life maybe that threw them over the edge. We just can't understand what makes people tick sometimes, but usually there's a trigger that they're dealing with something. Could be addiction, could be family problems, could be something that we just don't see on the surface. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure when Mental Health Awareness Month is, but we work with a lot of people in a very high pressure environment. Cybersecurity is a very high pressure job, 24/7. And so, we do have a lot of colleagues and friends that need help. And I highly recommend talking to somebody if you feel yourself under a lot of that pressure. But what we saw in a lot of the white collar crime type things, besides that small percentage that do it for the thrill, most of the time it was because they needed the money for something. Somebody in their family got in trouble. Somebody was sick. They were addicted to something that they needed to feed that habit. But usually there was a trigger that sent them over the edge, Fern. But it's so unpredictable. Yeah. Sometimes it was the old lady that had been there for 30 years, but her son got addicted to drugs and she had to steal to get him out of jail and pay for his attorneys and things like that. So you never know. You can never tell what people will do or capable of. But we are supposed to support our friends and family. So if you do have a challenge, please reach out to somebody and talk to somebody.
And here's a little caveat that I'll add. It doesn't matter how much money you make, actually, right? With the whole NBA scandal going on right now, with the games being fixed, right? People make millions of dollars per game, and they're over here hustling for an extra 20 grand or 30 grand bets, or however much they can, write or get down with a book somewhere or an illegal book somewhere. It doesn't matter where it was, right? It's the fact that these people are making hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, and now they're looking at prison time because of a $10,000, $30,000 deal, or they're playing poker and they're scamming their friends or scamming others out of however many millions of dollars. It's like crazy just to think that it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum of getting paid. You could be making $100,000, $200,000, or you can be a professional athlete allegedly doing these crimes, right? That's my thoughts.
Yep. You can't. I mean, you can never know. I think you hope for the best that everyone's doing anything ethically, but there's always these one-offs. I don't think this will be the last article we see. I think we saw one of these a while ago, right?
Well,
yeah,
similar. So there was remember the guy that has his own IT shop that was doing services for.
Well, he was doing pen testing and finding vulnerabilities, and then he'd reach out Was he doing something like that, and then reaching out and saying,
he was essentially he was breaking their environment and then billing them like $500 to fix it.
Yeah.
So he would intentionally break, or he would intentionally set something to break, whatever that was. It didn't say specifically in the article, but he would essentially go in, fix a problem, and then basically reset the time bomb to come back in a separate situation in like 30 days or 40 days or whatever it was. So he essentially set up his own like recurring business where he would go and fix it. And like, oh, like we keep calling this guy every single month to fix our stuff. And it's kind of annoying, right?
Or maybe they're like, of any mechanics that you might know?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Oh, man. Yeah, that happens too. Like,
yeah. So it's not cybersecurity specific. I think it happens in every trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think if there is any opportunity for people to make money, there were people that will find a way to cheat. Simple as that, right? Maybe it's not everyone. Hopefully it's not everyone, but there's at least a small percentage, right? Whether that's 1 or 2 out of 100, I don't know. Maybe it's 1 out of 1,000. Maybe that's more realistic. But depending on the stakes, I think you can always expect to find someone or find at least some actors involved trying to find a way to game it or are incentivized to make money, right? So it's, like you said, it's not just people in security. It's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, was there anything else to cover on that article specifically? Or is it more just like, this is what happened?
No, I think that was it.
Okay. I don't know if Troy maybe wanted to add anything in extra, but I figured I'd double check before we move on to the last.
Yeah. I think it's just so important that, we work with ethical people, and it just makes us infuriated when we see people in our trade take advantage of the victims who are already victimized. That was the key here for me, is that you're already dealing with somebody who's had a loss and is trying to recover. And for someone in our own profession to take further advantage of them is just terrible. So hopefully we don't see that very often anymore. But if you do find that, make sure you get it surfaced to light.
Okay. Nice. So we're gonna say that story's done. And now we're gonna go on to. So first we talked about outsiders spoofing to get in, right? Or not necessarily get in, but spoofing. But then trusted parties that come in as a part of a way to do some form of work, right? Whether it's on retainer or not, doesn't matter. Just you are paying a third party company to come in and do some stuff. Maybe they're your HVAC company. They gotta do some work on your HVAC systems, right? Like Target. Third party that comes in. Now they're in, right? But you've intentionally given them access in some way or another, right? And the information that they have, they use it against you, right? So there's that. The third one is people that work inside of your organization that maybe just don't do things the right way. And this one is interesting because it's international burglary heist story. Now, like I said earlier, I think it's pronounced Louvre. I've never been. I just know it exists because I've seen it. It looks nice. And I know there's a lot of expensive paintings and there's a lot of artwork in this place. There's a lot of crown jewels.
Real crown jewels.
Real crown jewels. Not the ones that people protect for their organization. They're digital crown jewels. Real crown jewels. I haven't really been following this story too much with the robbery, but what I've seen and what I've heard, slightly read, is so far 4 people have been caught, right? But what they and these are petty thieves too. They were not sophisticated criminals at all, at least according to one article that I read. And what they did was they rolled up with a box truck or a bucket truck, right? Essentially, like whenever you go outside and there's a power issue, right? If you're in Arizona, SRP is very likely one. You'll see on the side of the road, little white truck, big old white truck, stabilized on the back and the front, just holding it down, make sure it doesn't tip over. Little man with the harness on, fixing the transformer, right? That's what you see. It's a little bucket truck. Similar one is these guys had one. They rolled up to the Louvre. I don't know what side of the building it was, but they rolled up, extended the bucket, went in, broke the glass, used power tools, and stole a number of actual crown jewels. Walked out, left, right? Everyone knows that part. What I'm not sure everyone knows about is since the event, they've been doing some discovery, we'll call it.
Yeah. Discovery auditing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what they've found is that a number of systems, internal security systems, camera systems specifically, had a password of, you guessed it, not password, Louvre. Just spell it out. The Louvre camera system, it was a known fact that their password to get into their camera, security camera system, was just LOU. Was it RV? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not very good at spelling French. But
yeah, default passwords, right? So I think I think one of the things that we're trying to talk about here is obviously there is somebody on your team, and you have to trust them to make the right decision and put more complex passwords in. I think what you said, this was documented, right? So there was.
Yeah, there was.
So they did know about it, and they documented it, and they said, "Here's the password," and it was widely known.
I think the discovery went back to either 2014 or 2018. I have to go back and find it, but they went back and they saw this, and then that didn't stop there. It was in a lot of other places, and it was highly suggested that they change it. Right? It doesn't say when they change it, or if they make changes afterwards. But the simple matter of the fact is these problems existed prior to some sort of audit, right?
Yeah, you would think an organization that has hundreds of millions of dollars worth of art, probably even more, billions, because I think some of the art is probably worth hundreds of millions, and jewelry, right? Would have better security for their systems.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder if the folks who were actually in charge of the camera system were physical security guys who really had no cyber training to understand the importance of complex passwords.
But wouldn't that be common sense? If you probably shouldn't have thieves looking at your cameras. So you probably want a more difficult password, or at least have a policy to rotate the password every so often.
I have found that common sense isn't as common as we think it is.
So this lack of security awareness training for the physical security people?
Could be, yeah.
Since our podcast is AI powered, we're using ChatGPT for this one. So I just, as you guys are kind of going back and forth, I just threw in there, does the Louvre Museum have a CISO? According to this quick search, and it may or may not be right, probably very accurate though, it says they do not have anyone titled CISO visible in any public domain.
That might change after this incident for sure. But, I was going to say I'm glad this was brought to light in the news because it highlights a very big problem that we face every day in cybersecurity, which is just getting rid of complacency. People have gotten too comfortable being lazy. And, this was easy for people to remember. They wrote it down in a spreadsheet somewhere and they just left it like it was. And this isn't even a default password. Default passwords are things like admin, or password that come from the manufacturer that you're supposed to change. That's one thing. But when you create a password, this was created by an administrator to be the name of the museum. And so that is in and of itself insecure. And that's somebody failing to do their job of securing that system in a way that would be hard to break. So that's a different side of the coin. But I guess my point is this should be something we look at more holistically across the globe. It's not just a single incident here. I see this in every pen test that I do, whether it's the battery backups in the rack, whether it's the Wi-Fi, whether it's some IoT device on the network. I constantly find very weak or very common passwords in use for high security systems.
Yeah. If you think about even your home security, right? I think there's a lot of people who may have default passwords for their webcams, right? For security.
Mm-hmm.
So, or even your home router.
I say the Wi-Fi router.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is a good time to remind everyone, hey, go and check that password. And even if you change it, go rotate it. Right.
So more tidbits of information, AI powered again. So I'm kind of like looking through some of the articles that are out there. So as of November 6th, this article says that they had an audit done about 10 years ago. But I want you guys to guess, based on that audit, when they were expected to finish all of their security changes by. Just give me a year. So the audit was done 10 years ago. So we'll say 2015, roughly, not exactly, but it says essentially a decade ago. What year, if it was done in 2015, this audit, would you guys guess that those recommendations would be completed by?
That's a tough one because some things you can change, like these passwords you can change immediately. Mm-hmm. There may be some other things that you'd have to go and put in infrastructure for. So that may take a year or two maximum, right? Because you have to go procure stuff.
2025, Fern.
But yeah, I was going to say in reality, because the way you're leading this up to, and obviously it might be a nonprofit and government run. Yeah, it might take, maybe they haven't completed yet, obviously.
They definitely haven't completed yet. But so you're going to have to guess.
But when were they supposed to complete it by?
Well, do you think it was before 2025 or after 2025?
Before. Definitely.
Okay. I'm going to give you the actual number. You guys ready? Troy, are you sitting down? Okay.
I'm sitting down, yeah.
All right, perfect. 2032.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wild.
Wow.
So the audit was done a decade ago, but the recommended upgrades will not be completed until 2032. The state auditor said on a report Thursday of last week.
I've heard of digital transformation projects, but wow.
So digital transformation is like the cutting edge stuff. This is more like carbon copy transformation. Like this is the one where it's the paper.
Yeah, but did that include a lot of physical infrastructure? Like they had to go build certain things physically, physical barriers and things like that.
I don't know.
Because I would assume that's the case. Because if you have to go and build a whole new structure, I can't remember last time I was there. 2017, 2018, around that time frame. I remember the lines are pretty long and people are queuing up to try to get into the museum. Mm-hmm. It's not, depending on time of year, obviously if it's summertime, which is when I went, it's going to be super busy. So if you need to funnel people a different way and you need to build crowd control, that might take a long time. I can see that taking like 10 years to go and build new infrastructure to do that. I'm guessing it's probably not just digital security.
So I've never been. I'm like Fern here, Damian, but is this where the Mona Lisa is?
Yes. But the Mona Lisa is highly protected. It's behind
glass.
Right? Yeah. The first time I went to see it, it was not. And then
they had people throwing like whipped cream at it or something.
Yeah, protests were doing that. So now you cannot get, I think you get up to a certain point, but that's all glass.
So we were one bucket truck away from losing the Mona Lisa, maybe. Well, yeah.
Potentially. Yeah, I think the videos I've seen of it is it's behind like this, I want to say like 8 or 10 foot wide glass in front of it. And then there's security guards around it. Yeah. And then there's like a banister around it as well.
Yeah,
like
you have a rope.
Temporary rope. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so Mona Lisa's protected, but these crown jewels worth $106 million. Well, they were able to get broken into with power tools. I don't know which brand, but I mean, could you imagine the marketing team at the power tool company when they find out that their tools are used? Like, touchy subject, but if it was me in that marketing department, I'd be like, yep, we're talking about this. It's like good enough to break in and steal the crown jewels. Like, if you want the best tools for the job, buy blank, right?
I would hire Ryan Reynolds immediately and be like, make me a commercial Deadpool.
Yeah,
maximum effort. We're gonna do that because that's how they do, quick and fast, and it'd be funny. But yeah.
So I do have some more facts for you guys. Within the same article, it said that the museum's inability to do the updates on the infrastructure was exacerbated by excessive spending to buy artwork. And this is the fun fact. Only a quarter of the artwork that they buy is made public.
Yeah.
So you look at the museum and you see all this stuff, but only a quarter of it is actually part of their inventory. So 75% of what they buy, your eyes do not get to see.
Like curator rotate it. Sometimes they have different displays, different functional areas.
Yeah. So they spend a lot of their money on inefficiencies and ticket fraud in addition to artwork. So maybe that's just the answer is they want to buy all this artwork, but
maybe it was an inside job. Hey, guys, steal this stuff. We got too much of it anyways.
It's like, hey, in 2 months, the crown jewels are going out, boys. Yeah. I don't know. I could see that happening, right? I could see someone knowing the rotation schedule and knowing like, hey, like a $500 million piece of art is going to be out real soon. Same thing as the last story, right?
Maybe it's easier.
Sorry, I'm getting into international espionage here, but what's the market? What's the market for a stolen $500 million piece of art? Like everybody knows it's stolen. Like who's going to buy it?
Well, the art, I think that you'd have to be a special collector, right, to keep it hidden. But the jewels, you would just break it down.
Yeah, like if you're perfect
Tragic.
example. If you were to steal a Rolex watch that was made out of gold, there are tools out there, or not tools. There are companies and there are systems that exist that keep track of serial numbers. So, for example, if you have a really nice watch, you can call your homeowner's insurance and have them itemize your watches against your home policy, and you just hope that nothing happens, because if it does, you're like uninsurable for home insurance, right? Or at least maybe through that company. So what they do is that you have to give them a serial number. You have to give them the appraisal. So you have a third party appraise the watch. Then they link that watch and that serial number to your home. So there's a record of that serial number, right? Now, if you happen to find someone with let's say Rolex, because most people know what Rolex is, a gold Rolex watch, you can essentially just melt it down.
Oh yeah, have you seen the price of gold?
Yeah, you can melt down the watch. So you take the bracelet, melt it down, you remove the case back, take the movement out of the watch, throw the sapphire away, take the bezel, if it's metal, like precious metal.
Sounds like you've done this before.
I was going to say, I'm getting very, very nervous here. Fern. It sounds like you know way too much about this fencing of stolen Rolexes.
No. I've never bought a stolen Rolex, but I know the value of these watches. We'll say very well. And essentially what you could do is you could take everything that is meltable, I guess, and melt it. And then you take everything else, like the movement, and you just sell it as a movement. Because to my knowledge, the movement in most of the watches, I don't believe has a serial number, because it's all just components, right? And here's another interesting fact, is there are a lot of artists, rappers, right, that will have fake watches with real movements. And I'm in a lot of groups where people buy and sell watches. And what they do is they say, hey, this is an aftermarket watch. And you're like, well, what's aftermarket? Well, essentially the watch is fake. But what they have is, because if you buy a certain watch, it could be like 100,000, 200,000, but the movement itself might only cost 30,000. So you buy the movement for 30,000 and you have a third party essentially make the casing, and it looks just like the real one, but it's not manufactured by the original, like OEM, right? So what people will do is a lot of, we'll say rappers or artists that want flashy watches, they'll buy movements and then they'll install them in an aftermarket bracelet. So essentially a watch that could have cost $200,000 now only costs them $50,000, but it looks like it cost them $200,000 plus diamonds, right? So there is a market for like stolen watches.
Well, I'll tell you this, a similar thing with pens. So have you ever used a really nice pen, really nice Mont Blanc?
No.
You ever actually, it's so smooth.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like a ballpoint pen?
Yeah, it's really smooth. And so people were you can actually buy the refills and the inside, legit, but then people make the exteriors, like not even knockoff, you won't even know, but you would still get to be able to use that smoothness in a different exterior. So people have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, and one last question on the diamonds here. Like, some jewels are valuable in and of themselves, diamonds, rubies, sapphires, etc. But it's the piece, the historical significance of whatever Napoleon piece this was that caused it to be worth so much money. So I think that tearing it down, just taking the jewels out, would have been,
yeah, you'd lose history.
friction.
But obviously the thieves don't care.
You also lose a lot of value, because let's say the jewels together like worth $250,000, but together the piece significantly would be worth $2.5 million. I don't know, just numbers I'm throwing out there, but that would be my take.
Yeah, but like Damian said, it has to be a very special collector. So if you're going to steal a $5 million piece of art and you can't sell it, I think people are just like, all right, well, I can get $250 for it, right?
No, but it's like bragging rights, right? Somebody might want it and say, yeah,
yeah,
nobody else has this. And by the way, it was stolen.
You know that movie Ocean's 11? Yeah, I paid someone to do this. I mean, I'm sure there are collectors out there that have the money to pay for.
Just keep it in their underground cigar room. Every time they smoke a cigar, put the crown on.
Yeah. Look at it.
Act like a king.
Can you imagine just being in a basement of like a...
Just because I can. No. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to the whole ethics thing.
Yeah, for sure. But like you said, or like what I said earlier, is like, if there's a way to make money, people are going to do it, right? Maybe not a lot of people.
But in this case, they've already made a lot of money, so they don't give a crap. It's like a flex.
Oh, you mean
the underground art stuff?
Yeah, you're definitely not making you're not making it public that you own some of these pieces if you bought them, or if you own like stolen goods. Another fun fact: if a serial number on a watch is stolen, you cannot insure it. And in fact, if you take it and drop it off to a service center, like Rolex, for example, and they have record that serial is stolen, they will confiscate the watch and you'll never get it back. So, word to the wise, if you're looking to buy a watch, don't buy from a random person on Craigslist or OfferUp or Facebook Marketplace. Buy it from a legit store or a legit source, because if you do not verify the serial number is, I say, not stolen, you could essentially buy stolen goods, and then when you go take it to get it insured, because if you're spending a lot of money, you want to insure it, and you send it off to get service because you want to make sure it's running well, you might just get really bad news. And I've heard of a few stories where people, I don't know them, but they're within the community chats and the groups of people that do watches, where people bought like a $250,000 like Richard Mille watch, but it was stolen. So now in these groups, they offer serial number checks for a fee. Like it's like $1,000. But would you spend $1,000 to know that the watch is not stolen? Or would you not and then find out it was and then get it confiscated and lose all of your money?
Same thing happens with houses, by the way. Title scams.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How does that happen? Like someone
gets a title and a deed for your house without you knowing, and then goes and sells it.
Like if
do
there's
a quick claim deed, get it notarized, take it to the courthouse, file it, and then they own your home. Then you can take a mortgage out on it, and you don't know it until you get the paperwork that they're going to foreclose.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the scariest parts for us, right, as homeowners, is that there's not a real good security check around titles.
You can lock your title, so make sure you check with your local courthouse and do a title lock.
Not every state does that, though. Not every state and county does that. I think if they do, the county that we're in has a notification, so they'll let you know.
But you have to have the title lock on.
You have to tell them. I don't know how it works, but you can tell them to notify me if anything changes with this title. They can catch it early before they sell your house.
Really? That's wild. I've legitimately never heard of that title scam before. But it blows my mind. So say you bought a house.
It's not, I don't think it's digital, right? Troy, I think it's still, you walk in with like a notarized document and say, okay, the house is not mine.
Oh, that's right.
And they go, yeah, okay, here's a new deed or a new title.
Really?
And most of the time they don't try to sell your house, because obviously people would go to look at it and you'd be tipped off. What they do is they go to the bank and they get out a second mortgage or
against
a home equity loan.
So like, say you bought your house 10 years ago and it's worth double or triple right now. Perfect example. You bought a house before COVID. It's half the price of what it is today, right? Exact same house. So people made a lot of money if they bought a house right before COVID. And they go to this place, the courthouse, and they give them paperwork. And then they take that to a bank. That's probably not your primary bank, right? Probably like another bank that's not
secure equity line against it or something.
And then just get the card, ship it in the mail, and then boom, you're out. $250,000, $500,000.
Lien on the house.
And all that can be stopped by just locking the title.
Yeah, you got to find out, right, what's available.
That's not security related, but that's a nugget.
It is security related.
If you think about it, Fern,
that's a nugget for sure.
What I like to say is, like, this is the rise of fraud in a digital era. So you're looking at AI that's helping fraudsters get these ideas and do their frauds quicker. And then we have all the data breaches that are out there that have all of our personal information. All these massive data breaches we keep hearing about are on the dark web, so that hackers can buy our personal data. So we lock our credit. number one. But do we think about the things that we own, like our cars and our houses? So you need to definitely think about your title lock for your house. But AI is empowering criminals to be faster. We as consumers need to protect ourselves even more in today's digital age.
So now I'm paranoid. Can you do this with cars? If
Yeah.
you own the title, like, so say you own the car, right? So like my cars, I have titles.
Well, in Arizona, we have digital titles, which makes it a little more difficult.
But they still print it out and they mail it to you.
No, they don't anymore.
Oh, well, they did for me.
Yeah, you haven't bought a car in a long time then.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he worked with my wife on a Lamborghini fraud. There was there's a lot of fraud in cars and titles and stuff like that. So
that was completely different though.
Definitely
that Lamborghini story is crazy. You got to tell it one day, but maybe we can get the owner to come talk about it.
Okay.
But yeah, the car scams are all out there for sure.
Okay.
Especially for high end cars.
But if you have an old car, like a 2017 or older, I don't know if that's old, but it's at least 8 years old. Not an issue. Asking for a friend.
I'm sure there's value to it. It's probably a target.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, lock your title, or is the title or deed? Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Home title.
Home title.
Lock those. Lock your credit. And what do you lock if you're in a business? Nothing. You just put controls in place. I was trying to think of a boom, boom, boom before we're out. I don't know what the third one would be though. Oh, lock your title, right? Lock your credit. Hire a CISO. Boom. All right. Well, so we covered the 3 topics. We went from I think we went along the spectrum. We went from outside of an organization to getting in, or no, outside of an organization and spoofing people that are internal, having privileges or access as a third party, right? So there's that third party risk part, and then people that are inside, like the Louvre, or they don't apparently have a CISO, and their roadmap.
Well, yeah, but they don't necessarily need one. They had IT people.
Yeah. But is that enough? Clearly,
obviously not.
Clearly, it wasn't, right? Don't let that be a lesson for people if they're like, oh, we don't need a security person. We got a network engineer. Like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, we do. I mean, there's a lot of this too. And Troy, I know you do a lot, but just monitoring the dark web, it's possible that this was already being talked about, this attack, right? So if you have intelligence that says, hey, something might happen, just be on high alert. Because we do see a lot of information floating in Telegram or dark web, and sometimes you can take action early.
Okay. Well, you have to have access to those tools or access to those browsers and know how to actually navigate them, right? And I'm not sure I would even want something like that on my personal stuff. You hear a lot of crazy stories. But there are experts. There are people that you pay to do stuff like that, right? There are people that essentially work as undercover spies. They're good people that work on, or they exist in these Telegram groups, right? I've seen it where people get screenshots of some of these group chats and they post it, but it's in like an anonymous. Obviously, they don't show who wrote it, but the person that took the screenshot, you'll never know who that person was. It was a good person in the bunch of bad apples. It was the only apple that was good in the bunch. So yeah, we went outside to in, or from outside to third party to inside. Is there anything that we didn't cover?
No, that's trust everywhere, right? You got to figure out. We always say trust but verify, and I think this applies everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a trust industry for sure. Once you break that trust, you've lost it forever. But you make sure that you're checking those red flags. If you think something smells fishy, as Fern says, definitely get it checked.
Find some help or hire a CISO. I think, or you know what? Not even just hire a CISO. Just ask someone in security, right? I think that's the biggest thing that most people don't think about is if they're not in security, and something seems off, they might ask another person that's not secure and be like, hey, have you seen this before? It's like, how do I describe that? You know what that's like? That's like someone that's unhealthy asking someone that if for nutrition advice from another person that's unhealthy, saying, hey, is this bad to eat? And the other person's like, I don't know, I eat that all the time, right? And then you go to the doctor or like a nutritionist and like, dude, like that's the worst thing you could possibly put in your body.
But like, you think about it this way, they don't need to go hire a CISO. They could just find somebody and say, hey, you need some help. Can you just help us out? We'll let you wear the crown.
Put on the crown. So that's the message. Just ask someone in security. Find out from someone that does this for a living if you're not in security. And if you are in security, ask your friends. And I guess with that, we'll see you next week.